Hey, Jessica. So thank you so much for jumping on the podcast today. And so what I want to do is just go into some of your backstory on why you got into real estate and things like that. I guess first I should mention that I don't really know you that well. I've kind of seen you in some masterminds and I've seen what you're doing. I also saw that you posted the other day that you're like running the town in your city. So we'll probably get into a little bit of that. So I really wanted to just get to know you better in your business so that you could help out the audience on how they could sell some more real estate. So fill us in, like, when did you get licensed? Why did you get licensed? And how has your production looked and where's it going?
So thanks for having me. Gosh, I think I'm always what I call like the typical realtor, right? Like the reason we got into the business. And so when I talk about it, it's so cringy because I hate those people, right? Like now. So I worked in healthcare for years. I have a biology degree and a nuclear medicine degree. And so clearly the natural segue is real estate.
That would be it. That's
Yeah,
it.
absolutely. So I worked for a large company and they decided to bring my position back in-house in Seattle. And I live in Denver. So we decided we didn't want to move back to Seattle. And I was going to do the stay-at-home mom loop. And after 6 weeks, I was like, I'm going to lose my mind. I have to do something. And so my husband's actually the OG realtor of the two of us. And he was
Okay.
like, why don't you get your real estate license? And I was like, that's not even like a thing. Like no one really does that. No one like really makes money doing that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll do 1 or 2 deals a year and that'll be cool. And then, so I got licensed in March of 2014, hung my license on Thursday, wrote my first offer on Saturday. And I think at the time, the average sales price in Denver was like 200. And so by the end of my first 6 months, I had closed over 4 million. And I was like, oh, this is like fun. And I can like make an actual living. And it was weird because you don't know what you don't know. And unbeknownst to me, posting about being in real estate school and taking everyone kind of on this journey led to all these referrals, which led to business, which led to me kind of having this unusual success out of the gate, which I think is unusual, especially lately.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, when you say you wrote an offer like 2 days after you got your license, was that somebody in your network that you knew right away?
Yeah, it was a cousin of mine, actually.
Okay.
I mean, it was family. I didn't even have access to our contract systems here in Denver yet. So the first offer I wrote was I ended up having to, get a mentor because I had no idea what I was doing out of the gate. And called one of the girls in my office and mentored with her for the next little while and wrote my first offer on her contract system because I didn't even have permission to use it yet.
Do you think that can be duplicatable? Because like you mentioned, it's not normal that someone just comes in right away and already like starts knocking it out of the park. I usually a few transactions in their first year, things like that. But do you do you feel that was just because you already had a really good reputation? Like, how does that transfer over to somebody who's getting their license today and having that same success? Do you feel that it's like these people already trusted you and they knew like, hey, if you're going to go do something else, you're going to be all in on it? Or how do you feel that all came about?
One, I'm from here, born and raised in Denver. So my network was big already. So to answer your question, absolutely. My parents owned almost every bar and restaurant in downtown Littleton
Okay.
growing up. So just a massive network of people. With that said, though, I think it also came back to, like I said, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know that I was lead genning when I was posting about going to real estate school. I didn't know that people were actually watching and paying attention. And so they knew, like, as soon as I was done, oh, sweet, let's call her. And I think that was probably one of my first really big lessons in real estate, right? Which is you're always prospecting. You're always, even if you're not, you are.
Uh-huh.
And so that was something that I always kind of held on to. It was like, it doesn't have to be getting on a cold call every day. It can be really fun to lead gen and hang out with your friends and go look at houses. And so that's what I've always done.
Yeah. I don't think everybody knows that they're prospecting every day by like what they post and things like that. I follow a lot of realtors. I'm like, like that's an interesting way to try to get business. Meaning, I don't know if I would have posted that to try to be super successful, but whatever.
Yeah, like politics, I'm always like, oh,
Yeah,
you
you're
just
like
isolated 50% of your base.
right. So what's your business look like now? Because
So,
you're about 7, 8 years in.
yeah, I'll be
Okay.
9 years in March.
Okay.
Yeah.
What,
So
what
eight
what's it
years,
look?
no, 8 years. Yeah. So business now, it's funny, my business hasn't changed much. The volume is what has changed in the transaction count. So one of the things I always did, I always worked the hours my kids were in school. It was always super important to me to always be around. I didn't want to be the realtor who was working at 10 o'clock at night, kind of just the drop of the dime realtor. So when I first got into real estate, my littlest one was in kindergarten. And so he only went half day. So I had 3 hours every day to get everything done. And so I was very intentional with those 3 hours. So here we are, 8 years later, he's in 8th grade now. My oldest is now moved out and out of the house. So life is different. However, the boundaries and my business has not changed as far as he's in school from 7:30 to 2:30, and that's when I work. But the volume has changed. I've gone from, averaging, I don't know, say 15 to 20 deals a year. This year I'll close almost 70 by myself. So, but it's the boundaries. I'm super listing heavy. I make, like, my business is about my family. So everything is built and designed around that.
So boundaries, tell me about that. Like let's even go back 7-8 years ago. How did you structure that? Because I'm sure you had some buyers that were in the mix there. And I know, like, it sounds like you were hardcore with those boundaries. And I like, that's a super cool thing. Cause I know a lot of people who try to pull that off and they can't. How did you do that when you were first starting? Like when you had buyers, how did that look? I mean, cause they weren't just like, okay, cool. We'll look at homes before 3 before your kid gets off. Like you had to structure that properly.
Again, you don't know what you don't know. So like, I
guess that's true, right?
like, I just lived my life.
You just thought you were a 9-to-5 realtor and it was going to work out, and it did.
And it was totally fine. I mean, I really never thought about it, to be honest with you. It was just, I always looked at it like I'm self-employed, so I can do what I want. Right. And so that's what I did. So I have an expectation sheet that I give to my clients at our consultation. Okay. And in the expectation sheet, it's very like and of course I take phone calls after he gets home and things like that. But like, listen, he's a baseball player. We're gone all the time in the spring. If we're gone, I have a showing assistant. Someone's always going to be able to take you to show houses. Like, my schedule is never going to impact your ability to get into a house. And that's what they want to hear. They don't care what your hours are. And I think that's very true. They just want to know that they're always going to be taken care of. And they don't care by who, as long as somebody is going to take them to open that door.
How's that showing assistant work right now for you?
Oh my gosh, it's like, there isn't. I mean, there is no system. I mean, I wish I could sit here and tell you, like, I have some really great, like, one person hire that I just work with. I don't. Like, I use Showamy and I post on Facebook just like everyone else does. If it's somebody that I know their hours are really hard, like with work, and it's going to interfere a lot, I have a couple realtors that I refer to, and I'll give them like a referral fee, and they'll be the ones that do all the showings, the inspection, the final walkthrough, etc. And then that way it's one consistent person. But if it's like those one-offs, like, I'll just find someone to help me.
Okay. So you basically now, like, when you have a buyer, you just almost pay a referral fee to somebody to say, like, take care of them for most of the boots on the ground, showing homes, things like that.
No, that's only if, like, it's going to be consistently, like, they're only looking at like 6 o'clock at night or later. Then I get help. So that way it's the same person all the time. But again, if it's the one-offs, like, I pay someone $50 a door, like the rest of us do, I think.
Okay. So let's do 70 units this year. What's the percentage between listings and buyers? You said you're pretty listing heavy. So what's that look like?
So this year I was about 95.5, and that's always kind of my goal, is to be way more listings. So that's the other reason why I can handle the volume I can, because I'm not buyer heavy. Colorado is very fluid. So we have a lot of people coming and going right now. So I would say 75% of my clients this year have moved out of state that have listed with me. Okay. So that makes it a little easier too. But on the flip side, it makes it harder, right? Because you're having to double down on prospecting to get the same amount or more business, because you're not getting the buy and the sell.
So when you say 5% buyer business, like, are you turning down buyer business? I mean, because I would think you'd have a lot of people in your network, a lot more that were buying homes, right?
No, I don't. The last 2 years have been really weird. I mean, it's just been very listing heavy the last 2 years.
Well, that's cool.
Because I went from being 50-50, which I think most of us are for the most part, to very much being like 60-40, 70-30, and then this year, like 95-5.
Okay. So what does that look like now? Like, what's your marketing look like? What do you do on a like a day by day, what do you do? And then what do you do for like leveraged activities like mailers, emails, things like that? What's your whole marketing plan for the year? Like going into 2023, like what is the plan?
So this year, I think the biggest difference in my business this year was I've been farming my neighborhood for 3 years, and we always hear it takes about 3 years for it to kind of turn. This year was 1,000% the turning point. So I had 22 listings in my neighborhood this year.
Okay, wow.
And so that's the turning point. That was the game changer this year.
Wow.
And I've got 2 more coming on before the end of the year. So I kind of doubled down on what I was doing in the neighborhood. I run a Facebook group for the neighborhood. I think a lot of us do. I am involved with the HOA, but I only do like the social committee activities. So I'm seen as the fun one, not like the HOA, like I'm going to tell you your trash cans have been left out for too long one.
Yeah, that person's getting no real estate business.
Yeah, exactly. So that was something that this year, so for the next year, talking about 2023, I'm doubling down on my neighborhood and going all in. So like, again, to be candid, I wish I had some really great like marketing campaign that I could tell you I do. I don't. And that's one of the things that's I'm looking into changing for next year so that I can continue to get a good volume of business in my neighborhood without having to leave to go get business.
So when you say you're doubling down on the farm, does that mean doing like more mailers or more events, or is it actually adding homes?
So doubling down to me is like getting my name out there even more than I already have.
Okay.
So mailers are being added into it. As far as marketing goes, like we're going to sit down and figure out like what the marketing looks like moving forward, whether it's just listed under contract, maybe ramping up open houses. Open houses haven't been a thing here for a while. They're not very well attended. Again, I think that's a mindset thing for me. So we may change some of that this year. And that way, all they're seeing in the neighborhood is my name.
Okay. Did you say you're just going to start mailing?
Yeah. So I haven't done it consistently. I mean, I've done it. I just haven't done it consistently.
So then we're just pulling off all these deals from you being the HOA party planner?
Yeah. Like I said, I really wish I could sit here and tell you guys that here's like the play-by-play. I don't have that.
I think people who are in those situations, because I've seen it a lot and I've actually been a part of it sometimes in my career. I think those people just actually have like really good reputations and they don't realize it. Like you're known for being somebody who's solid and you're always known as being a solid person. And that actually can sometimes be the best marketing for you, is just when people are like, no, that person's great at what they do and they pass it over to somebody. Because I'm like, anybody who ever tells me like, hey, I'm doing 60 and 70 deals and it's just kind of a sporadic mission, I'm always finding out, I'm like, they're always the ones where I'm like, you're just a really like good realtor and probably like treat every client like gold. And that just gets passed on like no other, where you're not always having to go out and actually look for the new clients. You put enough love into the situation, it sounds like, where they go out and actually pass your name around. Like they feel like their friends and family and neighbors need to go use you, is what I would think.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I will tell you, I'll give you the one piece of like lead gen that's been the most incredible piece of lead gen of all time.
Please do.
And I never had to leave my house to do it. So every year in the neighborhood, I run in Colorado, we can buy Colorado State Park passes, right? And if you buy them in bulk, you get a massive discount. So I decided during COVID, like, let's just do this to get everyone out of the house. I updated my name on Venmo to say Jessica Lentz Realtor. So everyone has to pay me for their park pass, and then they had to come to my house to pick it up. Well, every year I'm averaging between 200 and 300 people in my neighborhood who participate in our park pass, right? So then they come to my house to pick up their pass and they have to meet me.
So you're like you're just the distributor of the park passes?
Yep. And I don't, right? Like, and they pay it for it, because everyone, I think realtors get very hung up on like, well, I have to be the one to pay for it. No, you don't. You're just providing value just by putting this whole thing together. So I have gotten multiple listings because people are like, we just felt like if you could handle that many people on Facebook in a neighborhood group coming at you for these park passes, you could probably handle selling our house.
Yeah.
But it's like, it was almost like a reverse bold. Remember in bold, I don't know if you were over Keller, but it was like a reverse bold where they came and knocked on my door to come meet me. It was amazing.
I was in Bold. I still get anxiety thinking about Bold. I remember I actually used to walk out. I used to walk out in the hallway to make those calls we had to call, and I would just act like I was calling people. And I'm like,
We all did. We
that
all did.
that was never my style of business. It never has been, probably never will be. And so like I would almost want to throw up when they said start making calls for an hour. I'm like, not happening ever. So
Ever in life, ever.
so okay, so you do the park passes, and then you're on the HOA. I mean, is that it? Because I feel like we're gonna find something else out that you're doing. Sometimes, like when I'm talking to people and we're talking about, they're just like, oh, I don't really have a lot of systems. And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait, you have a lot of systems. So do you have anything else that you're doing in the neighborhood?
In the neighborhood, no, but I am a firm believer, like the more people you know, the more people you know. And so like when I hear people talk about like their business is struggling or they're kind of in a funk, and I'm like, have you left the house lately? Like it's a simple question, right? Like,
Yeah.
are you just hiding out? I've always found like when you're in a funk, go volunteer, go do in the community. And again, like doing good brings good, and you're going to meet people. And when you meet people, what happens?
Right.
So, again, I don't think it's any like magical system. I think it's just making sure that we're being intentional with our time. Like we think of lead gen as picking up that phone or sending out our fancy newsletter, when really sometimes it's just as simple as going and hanging out for the day, setting up a play date, going out for coffee. And that's what I prefer to do anyway.
When you plan for next year, how to like, throw more into that, how does that look for you when you're making that plan? Are you just going to sit down for a few hours and think about like what your next steps are going to be next year to actually like add on to that?
So I actually, for the most part, I don't change much every year. I feel like if it's not fixed or it's not broken, don't fix it, right? Like it's fine. But what I am going to do is I want to take what I am doing and amplify it just a little bit and be
Okay.
a little bit more intentional with my time. I can honestly say I've gotten really lazy the last couple of years. I think COVID, I'm like the introverted extrovert personality. So sometimes it's really hard for me to constantly be out.
Me too.
I'd say most of us are probably like that because like I feel
Yeah.
like we're always on. And so it's really fun to be at home because you can just be off.
Yeah.
But this year, I want to be a little bit more intentional, plan my days a little bit better. Like Wednesday is the day that I go and do whatever and actually leave the house at 9 a.m. Wednesday morning and go do what I need to go do. So I think that's going to be more what it is, just being a little bit more intentional. And I think by that, the business will naturally come again.
Okay. So outside of the, like what we'd call maybe a farming of a neighborhood, I wish we could figure out a better word for that. But so what do you do for your past clients and like your network that aren't in that neighborhood? What does that look like?
So I have like a VIP Facebook group. Again, the last 2 years, I think have allowed me to become lazy. And so I haven't done a whole lot. I haven't done as much as I normally do. And so I planned my Q1 event. So I did do that for next year already. So I used to have parties at my house and it's just too much now. It's too many people. So we have to move venues now. So next year I'm going to incorporate back in some of those events, the one-on-one stuff, the bigger events. We just did a Colorado Rockies game for my clients, which is great, but I also feel like it doesn't give you a lot of one-on-one time. So the biggest thing I'd say that I do, I'm just there, right? Like I'm always there. I watch on Facebook, like someone's dog dies, you're probably going to get flowers for me. Like, I just think you can always just be a friend. It has nothing to do with real estate. We're just friends. I never send anything real estate related. Like if you get a birthday card for me, there's not one single mention in there about me being a realtor. I think that we as an industry get too hung up on every single thing has to be branded to us and our business. And we forget that like sometimes it's okay to like, and it's actually better to just be a friend. Just be a friend.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how, I remember when I made my business plan many years ago, I'd always said, I want to be a cool guy that sells real estate, because I noticed that I would lose some like business to people. And I was actually selling so much more real estate than the person that they were going to use, but they were connected with them in like their prayer group. It was their cousin. It was their best friend from high school. And it made me really sit there and think, I was like, do you know what? They use that person because they actually would feel worse going to the next party and telling them they bought a house with me, maybe the better realtor. But like, so they're going to actually go with the person they have the best connection with because they don't want to let that person down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always was just like, you know what? I want to be the cool guy that sells a lot of real estate, because I realized that if you put that one on the front end, you know, also being a good realtor on the back end goes a long way. So like, I'd always write down my marketing. We still do it to this day. It's always, what's like the 7 or 8 things we can send out to people that are fun. And you're still going to get like my postcards every month. And like, there's always that, you know, real estate stuff, but
That reminder.
I'm always looking for like, what can I actually do to make people feel important, like feel special, feel loved. And that's the ones that I'm like, I feel like has probably went the farthest, so that when they get the real estate one, it's connected to, oh, that's the cool guy that sells real estate. So
Exactly. And I think so many people have either not figured that piece out yet or aren't sure how to do it. And it's actually, to me, the easiest part of doing this job. It's like the easiest.
That's the one that I love the most, because it's actually very organic. I think if you are coming very intentional with you're trying to get business, it just comes off that way. But I think if you're just naturally like a really cool person and you try to be a good like human being, like the world will just like hook you up. Like they're like, oh, that's a cool person, you know, and they sell real estate and I want to buy a house. Like, let's call them. So what is your, so what's going on actually in your market right now that I mean, are your listings sitting a little bit longer these days, or is that not happening in your area?
No, it's absolutely happening. And I think like as we've kind of moved through this shift and I'm starting to kind of figure it out a little bit more. Like I listed one 3 weeks ago and we're already closed.
Okay.
So we're, you know, starting to kind of figure out maybe pricing a little bit more, and sellers are finally kind of catching up to what's going on. So I think it's getting, listen, I'd be lying if I said I'm not a little bit excited for all of this. You know, I think like the last couple of years have just been really, really intense. And I think that like this normalizing market is going to be really good for all of us. I've said it a few times, just even now, like I've gotten lazy.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
kind of nice to be challenged again, and you got to work and come back to like using your skills again and things that we used to do. So I'm a little excited for it. And I think with this shift, it's been, the last couple of weeks have been really fun. I think not many realtors would say that. I think it's been fun.
I do too. I actually have loved sitting like for the last, I knew there was like this tug of war that was going to happen in our market where it's like, hey, sellers still think they're going to get this, buyers want this. And it's kind of a tug of war for a few months until like everyone starts going to more events and hearing what's going on in the market and what they've experienced. And now I'm like sitting in my office again. I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm walking in with that different feeling where I'm like, you were just walking in for several years and you're just like order taking. And you're just like, okay, you go here, you go here. They were almost like telling us where to go so fast that we couldn't even think. Nothing wrong with it. I mean, it was a good run. But now I feel like I'm coming to the office. It's not as if everyone's telling me where we're going to go today. It's now like me coming to the office for like 30 minutes. I'm like, how am I going to progress the clients to get to the next step? Not how like they're not pooling me to these houses. They're not, it's all about like, what do I got to call them and talk to them about? And I think one of the cooler things is really not coming from that sales position and just really feel with the clients what they're going through. Because like, for example, I have, you know, a client yesterday I was talking to that's buying from out of state and moving here. And they're talking about like, will the prices go down? You know, and I'm having this conversation with them. I'm like, yeah, possibly. And they're like, man, that's so honest that you would just, and I'm like, I don't have anything else in me. Like so you move into that house and buy it for 1.5 and find out in 2 years, like you wake up in 2 years and it's worth 1.2. But I'm having these conversations. I'm like, but you're also 68. So I'm like, think of like when you're sitting on the patio for 3 years, drinking your coffee in 2026, and you're like, wow, this house is worth $300,000 less. Like, are you and your wife going to sit there with your financial state and really be like, son of a gun, like, I wish we would have waited and bought now? I was like, no, you're probably not. Cause like this life is going on while we're actually trying to buy real estate. So thankfully you're fortunate enough that you can not worry about all those details sometimes. So, but having those conversations with them, it used to just be like, buy it for 1.5, it'll be worth 1.9 here soon, you're good.
Yep. And
but
now
like,
we're like, well,
and,
I don't know.
Yeah, and just kind of sitting with them and like really not being salesy and just saying like, hey, let's talk this through. And if it's the right thing for you, it's cool. And if it's not, that's okay too. Like, you know, if you want to buy or sell real estate, I'm here for you, but I don't want to force you to do it.
I think you were in the mastermind in Vegas with Craig Rieger that we were in, right?
Yes.
And he said, and this is like something that I've like said to myself over and over and over again since that mastermind was his quote was, the order takers are about to go out of business and the skillionaires are about to become millionaires, meaning, and I really thought about that for a long time and like sat with that. And I was like, that's the stuff that I love about this business. And it sounds like you too, like the consulting piece and the like,
Yes.
let's sit together and figure out like what this looks like. And you are a consultant. And the side piece of it is we sell a house maybe, right? But like the real stuff of it is that we're here to help you. And that one quote for me made all of like going to Vegas worth it. Cause I was like, this is 1,000% what's happening. And it made me really excited for what's coming. And to be able to get back into a space with your people where like you're having these really great conversations. And it's not just list my house on Thursday and by Monday I want $100,000 more and I need 60 days. It's not just taking the orders, it's sitting down and having real conversations with them.
Yeah, like that market going on forever would just lead to almost being able to automate real estate. Like the more that stuff went on, don't get me wrong, like it was a really cool run. But like it also, now that I'm sitting back and really reflecting on it now more because I have the time, I'm just looking at that. I'm like, that would lead to so much automation if it was always just like boom, 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 boom. Like everything could be on autoplay and you just wouldn't need those people that leveled up. And it's like you said, I mean, those are generally my favorite conversations to have with clients when I'm like, hey, let's just block off 30 times. Let's just talk about it. And I think everyone uses these words like, oh, let's have a consultation. I'm like, let's just jump on the phone for 30 minutes and just like, let's just talk let's talk this through. And like, let's just logically just think this through and let's bounce ideas off each other. Like there's no wrong or right. Let's just hash it out. And I think they appreciate that level of concern where like Bowers isn't calling me to like, he's not going to get me to go to the next, like he's not trying to push this. It's like hey, and I get off the phone with some people. I'm like, don't do it. Like it's not worth it. Or getting off the phone with clients and be like, hey, like rent it. Like, you've got like a 2.8% interest rate on it. You paid $1,200 at rent for $2,800. Like if I sold that thing, I'd feel bad for you.
Right. It's a no-brainer.
And
but that's the stuff that I miss. And that's the stuff that like I'm really excited about is like having real conversations again and being able to help people make real decisions rather than like, we just know what's going to happen. Yeah. And it doesn't, my opinion and what it's sitting here having a conversation doesn't matter because we know what's going to happen.
Yeah. What's a listing right now? Like if you were going on a listing appointment today, what does that listing appointment look like now? What would you be going over with them?
I think the biggest thing is here, our pricing is, I hate to use the word falling, but the perception is that the prices are falling, right? Like I sold one on the same street for $725. We're closing on the same model down the street for $588. Now, the one that closed at $725, that was a symptom of the market. That number was never real. It didn't appraise for $725. That's the conversation I had with those sellers when I met with them was this $725 house, while it looks really great on paper, here's the appraisal because I was the listing agent. And I know for a fact it didn't appraise. And really it should have closed where we listed at. And so it's bringing people back to kind of that reality place of like, yeah, this was really fun and we had a really great run, but now we've got to stage the house. We've got to price it correctly, and a lot of times pricing correctly really does mean kind of pre-pandemic pricing here in our area. And that's a giant pill to swallow. Yeah. However, you still have a ton of equity. You're still making a ton of money.
I know.
And how are we, what are we doing to, get the best price that we can? So it's really and truly, back to sitting with people and talking to them. It's really setting those expectations and being able to articulate exactly what's going on. I was laughing. I saw one the other day in the MLS. It's been listed for like 73 days. And in the broker remarks, it said, we're allowing overlapping showings to be fair to all buyers in this market. Please be courteous. And I'm like, because even 73 days ago, the market had changed and changed drastically, right? And so it's stuff like that where, I'm like, gosh, how upset must those sellers be because the expectation wasn't set properly. And an already stressful and frustrating experience is probably beyond stressful and upsetting. at this
Yeah.
point. So that's it. I mean, I feel like my listing consultations are hanging out with friends and let's talk through it and let's figure out what's going on. And there's been several listing appointments lately. We've walked away and I've said, I don't think it's a good idea for you guys to sell. I think you guys should stay put.
That's the best referrals you ever get in life. Like
Mhm.
those, I don't think, I mean, I wish more people came from that. Just do what's right for the people. Cause I'm like, those are the best referrals you get. It's like when you tell somebody don't do something that you make money off doing, like they go and they're like, oh my gosh, this guy needs, when my grandma needs to sell, he needs to go there because he's not just going to be like pulling her arm to sell a house. Like he's genuinely trying to figure out what's the best situation.
Mhm.
And so like, I think that goes far. So when you go on listings now, because I'm really intrigued in this, because I'm a student on these when I'm doing these podcasts, because I now am going to listings and obviously over the last 2 months, they've totally changed, right? So like they're now sitting down more and it's more of a consultation. And like when you have, tell me a little bit more about like are you bringing in all the data and comps? Do you use any type of other systems? I know other realtors use like systems to find out like what's the percentage that house has to sell and things like that. What kind of data are you bringing in?
So, you know, I think people sleep on their MLS and how much data you can actually pull from your MLS.
Right.
I had an appraiser one time walk me through the way that appraisers pull things through our MLS. And so I do it the way an appraiser does it. And so one of the things I bring is, you know, showing them the way that we can break it out in our MLS right now is I can do the first 4 months of the year on one graph, and I can do the most recent 4 months of the year. What an easy way to show people what's going on, right? Like here it is, black and white. It's just data. It's no opinions. It's just data. And when you have a graph that one's going all the way up and you have another graph that one's kind of crashing down, there's just no arguing that about pricing because they can see it. So I think that experience coupled with the data will always help, right? And I think I've been advising my clients to list on the conservative side. I think, and then that way we don't have to do a price reduction for 30 days. And that's really the goal is, you know, let's price it correctly. Hopefully we're under contract before that 30-day mark. And if not, then we know that our next price reduction is going to be aggressive. We're not going to be an agent that reduces by $1,000. We're probably going to reduce by, you know, 25,000. So it's just having those conversations. I think one of the things to me that have been kind of, and I hate to use the word funny, but funny in this market is we hear all these like 2-1 buy down catchphrases and things like that. I have yet to actually run across the real estate agent who actually knows how to deal with it. And so a couple of the listings that I've gotten recently is because I was able to articulate to the sellers simply what that actually meant.
Okay.
So I think, you know, back to just education and consulting and knowing what you're talking about, like if you're going to say this is a marketing thing we should be doing, you should probably know how to explain it to your seller. So there's just been weird things like that, I think, that are going on. And I think that's where that skillionaire comment comes back to from Craig Rieger, right?
It really is like when you say skillionaire, like I really believe that's the era we're going into. I'm super excited for it. How I know is it was probably about 5 years ago. And I remember I went on this run for like 3 weeks where I was like the second realtor on these listings. And what was interesting is when I went to these, I was the second realtor on them. I was actually, it was almost like someone was going to work and complaining about their realtor. And then I was the one that they were like, oh, call Bowers, right? Well, it happened in this
You were the cleanup crew.
There you go. It happened in this little pocket of time where it really like stayed in my mind. And I remember going there and I tell them like, hey, your price is off a little bit. Like, who suggested this? Was it, because I'm like, there's two things that can happen. There's sometimes a client who's very unrealistic and their realtor's telling them what to do and they just won't. And there's also time where there's a realtor who's just like not bold enough to tell someone the truth, or they didn't know. And that could be the case. And all three of those people that I sold homes for said that their realtor never even talked to them about price reductions. And they were the ones that set the price.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what do you mean? So I took those listings and almost sold all of them within like 2 weeks after listing them.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd already been on the market for like 90 days. And they were like, oh no, the realtor set the price. And I was like, never did price reductions and talk to you about that stuff. No. And I'm like, man, how timid were they to not have a conversation? Like I said, maybe they just are like timid, or maybe they didn't know, but it just shows you like, we're going back into that era where I'm like, I told my wife recently, I'm like, we're going to be the cleanup hitter again. Like we're going to
The
have
cleanup crew.
a lot of these order takers are going to take an order, and the order is going to be list my price for my house for what I want. That's the order taker. And then the cleanup hitter, that person goes to work and they're pissed off. And then they're going to tell someone there, it's like, oh, you should call Bowers. He's a guy who's going to consult you and talk to you. And then, that's going to be the call I'm making when it, expires. And you're still getting the referral. Like we've got our business probably always, but it's just, you're the second one that got it after the orders were taken. I'm like, no, this isn't really how it works. Like this is what your house is going to be priced for. And do you really need to sell your house or not?
And those are the people who end up being the best listeners, your biggest fans, like the best people that you could have ever worked with, right? Like I've always found that those are the people that you will never have a bigger advocate for your real estate business than those people that you were the cleanup crew on. I don't know. I just keep coming back to, like, if you're a newer agent, like you need to get in the rooms with the people having these conversations, because you've got to learn these skills, and you can't just go on a listing appointment, while out, and hope that you remember what we're talking about. Like you need to be role playing. You need to be having conversations, and you need to be role playing with realtors who do this every day so that you can learn. Because if you're not willing to learn, you're probably going to go back to your 9 to 5 here shortly.
Yeah. When you started, where did you get your training from? Like when you started, how did that all work out for you? Because I mean, we can keep saying like we're really good at consultations, and we are. And I look at that now and I'm like, okay, that's from experience, right? It's like we have that from experience. So I think of like the listener now who's like, hey, I just got my license in the last year where I was an order taker. Like, where do you think they would get that? Where do you think they would get that confidence to sit down in a listing appointment and have it, a little bit more structured where they know what to do?
So for me, it was kind of twofold, right? So one, I made the decision to have a mentor. And I hear so many new agents say, I don't want one. I don't want to pay for one, et cetera. Like my first 3 transactions were 50% to her. And then whatever my split was to Keller. And so I was like left with pennies on the dollar. Do you think that all these years later it matters? No way. Because if I hadn't done what I had done, I wouldn't know what I know. And so it was worth 10 times the amount of money that I paid them. Right. And then the other piece of that was I was really fortunate to have a really incredible broker who turned into one of our really good friends. He passed away unexpectedly last February. But he was, from a contract knowledge perspective, from making sure that we always understood what was going on in the market, always knew how to talk to clients. I know that he was rare and not everyone is fortunate to have that. But you can find someone like that, right? Like there's always someone like that. I think that if you listen, there's podcasts, there's books, there's masterminds going on constantly. There's tons of groups you can plug into. I think we're at a point in real estate specifically that if you are not successful and not plugged in and not learning, it's totally 1,000% on you.
Yeah.
And you have to take ownership for that. So there's no excuse to not know what's going on. And I would say that every successful realtor that I know, if you were to pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I need help, I don't know a single one that would say no. Do you?
I don't.
I mean, that's the truth.
I'm always so shocked by like that statement right there. Like I like going back to what you were saying about like somebody paying for a mentor. I think right now, if there was a certain avenue that I wanted to get into business, like let's say I was trying to be better at like farming or pay-per-click or whatever it be, right? Or open, like I would go to any realtor right now, 17 years in the business, and cut that deal and be like, hey, like if you like expired listings, I want to get better at that. I want my ISA to start calling expireds. Never did it. So how do I train on something that I've never did?
Right.
So like if I can go to a realtor right now and be like, hey, I'll give you 50% of these deals if you just teach me what to do. So I'm like, if I would do it 17 years just to add like a leg of my business that could probably close 15 to 20 more transactions, like that's even more important to why like a new agent should probably cut that deal with an agent, because you actually don't even know how to do the real estate transaction. Like I'm actually talking about how to get a piece of business from a different avenue, marketing. The other one's contracts, which are very serious and very important.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, you have your actual like component of the business, and then you have your actual component of the business. Like same things, very different worlds though, right? Like one's how to get the business and do it, and the other one's how to not get sued.
Yeah. There you go.
Two different ways.
Yeah. So when you sit down and think of 2023, do you make goals of what you want to close, or is it straight up just like, hey, do the same thing that I'm doing and it'll go where it goes?
Yeah, I have my 2022 goals on the board and I've tripled almost everything. So that was fun this year.
Wow.
Well, that was, I cut out like a lot of stuff and just focused this year. And I think it's proof that like, you kind of go back to the stuff that's important to you.
Yeah.
You're rewarded. And that's what happened. So I always I'm a little like hippy dippy when it comes to my goals.
Okay.
And I think like as a woman, when we set goals, I think, and I've coached so many women who they're like, well, I want to take my family to Disneyland. That's amazing. And I love that. What do you want though? Like so I always say like, sit down and you have to figure out one goal that's for you. It has nothing to do with business, has nothing to do with your husband, it has nothing to do with your family. You need to sit down and figure out one thing that if you hit your goals, like this is what I want to do, or my goal for myself. And so I think that always takes a little bit longer to kind of dig into the meat and potatoes, I think, like as a woman. And so that's the first thing I start with is me. I always come back to, if I'm not okay, they're not okay. So you got to start with yourself and then we work our way kind of outwards.
That's cool.
And I always do a monetary goal. I don't care about transaction count. I don't care if I do 10 deals and make the same amount of money, great. So I always work my way backwards from the money I want to make and how do we get there? And I keep it simple, like keep it simple is the way I always look at it.
So I saw you post the other day that you're 97 in your MLS or something like that. What does that look like? Tell me more. Cause that's like really cool. And I remember you posted it and then you said like, oh, I'm putting a date or something on it for all those low level haters. Like I'll actually remember that forever because I looked at it, I was like, that is so funny. I was like, who wakes up in the day and just decides they want to just go like dump on someone for their success? It's so gross. So like when you said that, I was like, I'm putting a date on this for the low level haters because it changes. and tomorrow, you knew you might the next day be at 101. And then all of a sudden now it's like, no, she's not telling the truth.
Well, the reason I did that truthfully is because our real estate commission, people have been filing commission complaints about people saying like, I'm the number one realtor, I'm the number one this. And so it turned into a really big deal. So truthfully, we are supposed to quote where we get our data from. And so part of it was, I'm trying to be in compliance. The other part of me, then the other part of me was like, that there's always somebody that's watching that's mad about something and who's going to say something. So
I loved how you didn't even say hater. I was like, she said low level hater, as if there's like a high level hater and a low, like you went like, no, you're this person and you're the lowest of that person. So what does that look like? So you said 97. I mean,
it's funny because like I always had like this, we always have like, I always have like these weird goals. Like we have a magazine here called Real Producers. I'm sure you guys have it in Arizona too. And that one's not like a paid for. And so like, I always wanted to be in their top 100 single agents. And like, I did that this year and then I did it. And I was like, that's cool. And then I was looking at something the other night. I don't even know what I was looking at. And it pulled the production. And I was like, I wonder where I'm at. And it said like number 98 or whatever it was. And I was so excited because that was all agents. That wasn't just single agents. That was teams, builders, Zillow, Open Door. That was everybody. And I was number 98 or 97. And I was so like proud of that.
You should be. I was so excited. Did it wear off already?
Yeah, it did. Yeah. I mean, I always come back to like, we're so much more than our transaction count.
I do the same thing you do. Like when something comes across that I'm like, oh, damn, I'm proud. But man, it lasts like 47 minutes. Because then you really think about it. I'm like, like that doesn't define me. I've actually had to I've had to find a way as I've gotten older to not find my identity in real estate. Yeah. That's super hard. Like, you know what I mean? When like, that's what you're striving for and you're trying to be better. And like, I found like for a while, like my identity was all real estate. Like that's all I was known for. And I even thought I was like, what if in 5 years I didn't do this anymore? Like, would I actually be okay? Cause like, it's my circle I'm in, it's what I do. It's what I talk about. It's what I post about. It's what I'm always trying to accomplish. And don't get me wrong, I still have a super big passion for it, but I have to like pray almost like daily. And I'm like, like you don't want to be that 78-year-old guy that maybe is retired and you just can't find yourself because like that's what you were. And
Mhm.
I'm telling you, like, I've been going through this for the last few months where I'm like, God, like, please help me not this can't be my identity. I want to be great at it. I want to be the best, but like, just let me be okay when I'm 80, that
Mhm. That I'm not.
this isn't who I am, that if I'm the guy cleaning up my church and like, that's what I want to do with my time. Like hopefully
But I'm good.
I'm the best person at that. So
Yeah, I feel
you
that
go through
way.
any of that?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of going through it right now. So I've been a mom since I was 17. My oldest just moved out. My little
Okay.
one is 13, he's going to be in high school next year. So I feel like from the perspective of like being a mom, like I'm absolutely going through that. Like I have been a mom longer at this point in my life than I haven't. So I'm going through it like on the mom front. And then I just turned 40, which like that's a whole wild thing. And then like the real estate piece, like you're talking about, like I'm really at a place where I'm like, I don't want to do this forever. What does that next piece look like? How am I going to start leveraging? So I'm in a very like transition phase, I feel like, in the real estate business right now. And it'll be really interesting to kind of see what 2023 brings. In a perfect world, I would love to be out of the business in 5 years when my son graduates and on a journey on an island somewhere slinging drinks at like a high-end hotel. Like that's really like if somebody said to me, what's your dream? I would love to live on an island and talk to cool people all day and make cocktails and go home at 5.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cause even as I'm going through my journey, I'm realizing like I make a lot of monetary goals, right? And I look at that and I'm like, really, like my life has always been defined by just like experiences. And so I'm just trying to figure out now, like, like as I'm getting older, I'm trying to take more experiences and not focus so much on that. Now, don't get me wrong, like having that helps you do the other, but it also
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. Like there's sometimes when I'm doing the funnest stuff and I'm like, this actually cost $0. Like sitting by your pool and reading a book with no one talking to you. I'm like,
Is the greatest thing ever.
this is gold. And I'm like, it's kind of free outside of building the pool, right? But after you have it, I'm like, this is actually a free experience that I'm having that I love and cherish so much. Like, why are you not going to that more and always going to these other places?
Mm-hmm.
Always weird, huh? Trying to find yourself is one of the funnest missions. But I think I'm noticing that real estate is more to me about like self-development. Like I'm so thankful for this industry because I always say like it raised me. I got into it when I was 22 and immature. And I'm like, it's raised me into like a good person. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't think without the challenge of it and the motivation. And I remember my friends when I was in my 20s, like, you're gonna regret not going to this. And I'm like, you think when I'm 82, I'm gonna regret not going to that party? I think like you might be regretting that you didn't actually put more into life and that you got older and you're like, I probably should have did more. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Let's talk about it when we get older. We'll see. Someone
Right.
will
We'll
be
see.
right.
We'll see.
And so
Yeah.
that's kind of more of the stuff I'm thinking about as I'm going through like this journey of real estate is like it's raised me. And so not having kids, I just look at it like it really did raise me and turn me into the person I am, good or bad. But that's like the funnest stuff to like think of now. And I think but here's the cool part is, were we thinking about this 6 months ago? Like I wasn't as much because it was order taking. It was so fast paced that I'm just like, you were go, 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 go. I was at least just, it was always go for me. Like, and sometimes I wasn't even leaving my house. I was just like contracts coming in and, contract going out and I got to get my
You didn't
showing.
even have time to leave your house to
There you,
go to the office. You had to just stay home.
yeah. So, and I remember Gary Keller once said, and I hold on to this dearly, is he used to say, during the short sale era, right? We were going through it. I remember going to mega camps and like a family reunions. And he would say, hey, remember that you guys are praying for this market to go away. And why that's happening, your dog's going to get 7 years older. Your kids are going to get 7 years older. Your relationships are going to get 7 years older. So like, as you're praying for this to go away, a life is going on. And so like, stop wishing that things were better or worse. Like cherish the best part about what that day got, like cherish the best part of that day
Mm-hmm.
and just love the day for the day. Meaning there's markets that go up, there's markets that go down, but all those markets that go up and down, like you have this like really cool thing going on in your life. It's like the people that you love and they love you. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, you're like, that's all that matters, right?
That
Like
is all
that's
that matters.
genuinely like whether you have 1 million coming through the door or 150,000 coming through the door, like these people are all like here with you. It's like, make sure that's all solid because they're the ones that are there when you are up or down. So,
Yep,
um,
exactly.
when you talk about the run that we were on, my coach, I'm just going to say this because we both said the word run. I was saying that to him last week and he said, I said, man, we had a good run. And he said, Bowers, if you say that one more time. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you act like you just retired.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Or got
okay.
out of a relationship. You had a great run.
And he said, why don't you say I'm on a good run? And I was like, okay. So I had to start trying to change my perspective on that whole, like, cause I kept saying it over and over for like 3 months. I was like, that was a good run. That was a good run. And he's like, you're saying it as if like, it's like ending point of something, where why don't you just say like, I'm on a good run? Like you're putting a beginning and an end to it, and you're not just continuing it. So as we wrap up, what would you like, new realtors or people that are just confused right now, what would be some of your recommendations?
I mean, for me, like truthfully, I'm enjoying being steady, right?
Okay.
Like someone said to me the other day, like, oh, aren't you so glad that you're slowing down? And I'm like, I don't think I'm slowing down as much as I am just enjoying life and being steady, right? Like, so I would say again, you need to just get in the room with the right people, and you need to make sure that you're learning and educating. And I think the more that we're around people that can teach us the skills, the calmer we are, the better things are, the more we're able to handle what's coming at us. And I think you have to just enjoy what's going on around you right now, because there is a lot to be found right now in this market. And I think that if you can find the pieces in this market that you really enjoy, you're going to thrive. But if you're constantly focused on the negative, and you're constantly focused on the media, and you're constantly reading in every Facebook group out there for realtors that the sky is falling and holy crap and batten the hatches and all the, like, then that's how your experience is going to be. So you shape your experience in this market right now.
Yeah. I've had to get off certain things anymore, because I sometimes find like certain groups that I'm involved in are like, they're talking about the stuff that I'm like, I don't even want to subscribe to, it's like all they're talking about is what's going on in the market. And I'm like, where is there any solution based to this except for like creating like absolute fear and anxiety in you? That I'm like, there was no even solution brought up in that 20-minute talk. So I'm like, what's the point? Like, go to this meeting and we talk about high interest rates and house prices coming down. Like, and then I walk away and I'm like, I could have just turned on any news station and saw that. Like, that doesn't seem like it's good for like the soul.
Nope. And I tell my coaching clients that, right? Like, you have 3 minutes to word vomit everything you want to word vomit, and then we're done with it.
When you say coaching clients, what does that mean?
So I ran a coaching company for years with just women. Every Tuesday I would coach, X amount of women or whatever. And I shut it down during COVID because it was just with homeschool and all the things. And so I kind of like have relaunched it recently. And so that's been really fun too. Like, I think that's like another piece of this that maybe I was missing the last couple of years, being in this order taker mode where I just felt like I wasn't giving back. So I'm back into the swing of that, maybe a much less intense level. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Like, you've got 3 minutes and then we're done and it's time to move on, literally and figuratively speaking.
Meaning like when they get on the call with you, they got 3 minutes to like vent.
Yeah, you've got 3 minutes and then we're going to start figuring out solutions.
Okay.
And I don't want to hear about it again.
That's super
I don't care
cool.
what interest rates are doing. I don't care what the market's doing. I care about what you and your mindset is. So let's get back where we need to be.
Man, you should talk to my wife and make me do that. Cause I am some days I'm like wild. I'm like, this is, I can look like a positive person out there in the world. There's some days internally where I'm like, this, and this. I'm going to tell her I have to start doing that.
We all do it.
I'm going to give her, like, I'm going to tell her, like, I have 3 minutes to like start the clock. I'm going to start doing that to myself. I'm going to be like, hey, start the clock. I got 3 minutes. Let me go real quick.
And that's it. And then we're done.
And then we're going to do solution. So do you actually take on new coaching clients, or is that like a speakeasy where someone has to knock on the door with a password to get in?
It just kind of depends. I work better with women, just the truth. I actually don't coach anyone in my market because I don't want to deal with contract questions, because that happens.
Okay. Makes sense.
Again, that comes back to my boundaries, my life, my time. I learned, I was a productivity coach at Keller. You learn a lot doing that. And, contract calls 11 o'clock at night are not my jam. So I won't coach women. I won't coach anyone in my market. I know that sounds terrible, but it's the truth.
It makes sense. Like
it has nothing to do with competition. It has everything to do with my boundaries.
No, it's like if you were going to get involved in more contract questions, you would just go take on more clients. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're wanting to do high level mindset coaching.
Yep.
Like, cool. Let me answer your Benzer question. Why I'm not doing more transactions than hang out with my family, right?
Yeah.
How would someone reach out to you?
So you guys can always find me on social. Jessica Lentz on Facebook. I can't even remember what I am on Instagram anymore because I have a personal and a business. So my name's in both of them.
Okay.
And yeah, you can always contact me through there.
Thank you so much for jumping on. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I met you a few times at some masterminds, but I've never really known your story, and it's super cool. I'm glad that I hope that we can have a friendship moving forward. Cause like your story is just really cool. I like the way you're going with it. You're just it sounds like you're consultation, passionate about your clients. You also respect your personal life. And I think that needs to be talked about more in our industry. And like you could just feel it when you're talking that you've got some hardcore boundaries. And I love that. So
I think I wish that we all did in this business. It's hard, but it's something, the 24/7 hustle culture. You know, I've seen it, we've all done it, we've all seen it. We're like sitting by the pool on vacation, like work hard, play hard. And I'm like, no, just go play hard today. Just go play hard.
Just go play hard. Okay, that's after we get off this, I'm just gonna go play hard today. Okay. And I'll be like, she told me to, right? Like I have an excuse. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, bye.
Yeah.